introduce a friend of the show. He is the sideline reporter for the Chicago Bears. He's a former NFL fullback, Jason McKie. Thanks for joining us, Jason. Appreciate you. You said, and we were talking just off the air, and when you read in the run-up and the aftermath of this trade between the Chicago Bears and the Buffalo Bills, the Bears fans kind of saw it writing on the wall as far as DJ Moore was concerned. Just give us your take on, how obvious this trade was going to be for somebody, not just the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I think when you look at the cap number that DJ had this year, and obviously the Bears trying to get under the cap, now even more so with the retiring of Drew Dahlman, added more holes to this team in particular. So, Ryan Poles and company trying to find ways to get under that cap to add more pieces and to fill as many holes as they can in free agency. And you can't fill all the holes via the draft. So you lose a veteran receiver that was very productive, a guy that was well-liked in the locker room, a guy who made a ton of plays, on the Chicago Bears football team, in particularly this year, but throughout his entirety since he was in the Bears uniform. So it's bittersweet because he was a guy that did a lot of things. He was really, really good in terms of run blocking and the run game with the run scheme that Ben Johnson implemented this year. DJ was a vital part of that. So you lose all of that, and to say that Buffalo gains all of that. You get a receiver that's tough, that's physical, a guy who has familiarity with Joe Brady during the time of the Carolina Panthers. Joe Brady was the OC there for 2 years with DJ Moore, who during both of those years went for over 1,100 yards. So, Josh Allen and company get a nice weapon with DJ Moore added to the mix.
Jason, one of the big concerns, I can already hear it now from the fan base, is he's going to be 29 years old before the start of the season. You look at, when you go down and look at his production over the years, last season probably is the one that stands out the most because of his lack of production last season. So what's left in the tank for DJ Moore, and should the age be a concern?
I don't think it should be a concern. He played in every game this year. He's tough. He's played hurt, a ton throughout his career, especially here in Chicago. And I think the dip in the numbers we saw last year with the Bears was because you had the emergence of a lot of young players. You could talk about Colston Loveland, Luther Burden, Romo Dunze came out the gate strong this season with the Chicago Bears. And Ben Johnson's a guy who, doesn't really necessarily have a number one receiver. His route concepts is based upon what the defense is giving him, and he loves to spread the ball around. So I think that's why you saw the dip in production from DJ Moore. But when he was a true bona fide number one receiver, just like his days in Carolina, he produced. And he produced those big numbers, under Joe Brady. So it'll be interesting to see, how the Bills and you guys utilize him. But I think there's plenty of meat left on the bone in DJ Moore's career.
Well, you stand on the sidelines and watch these Bears teams play. How have they – and it seems like we're here in Buffalo, so we're following the Bills. But the Bears, you kind of give them the side eye, check on them once in a while. Caleb Williams in particular, they evolved pretty quickly this year, right? I mean, Caleb Williams became what looks to be a guy who's going to be there for quite some time. The question marks have been answered, correct?
Correct, yeah, and this team has really taken on the identity of their head coach, Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson, obviously, we see how he is and how he interacts with other coaches. He's the ultimate confident coach because he puts in the work and he does not let any detail slip. The preparation is at a mental level, and he's instilled that in his team. And not only that, this team has a strong belief, amongst themselves, a belief in his coaching staff, and they had a belief that they can win in any game last year. And we saw that time and time again. This team was down 7 times under 2 minutes left in the game and came out on top. So when you have that recipe, when you have that belief, and when you have a coach that's been able to embed a culture throughout the locker room and those players uphold that culture, well, you get the results that the Bears had this year.
Look, Bills fans have been thirsty for any type of wide receiver news, and they get it here with DJ Moore. So we kind of know the temperature in the room here after the trade. What is the temperature in the room amongst Chicago Bears fans knowing that they're getting back the 60th pick for DJ Moore?
I think it's bittersweet because there's a lot of fans, right? DJ was well-liked in the community. He was well-liked in the locker room. He made, like I said before, he made a lot of tough plays. And I think when you look at a Chicago Bears receiver, right, it was said a long time ago, and one of my former teammates said that Chicago is where receivers go to die. And I think when you look at DJ Moore's career, you look at some of the receivers that have come before DJ. You talk about Alshon Jeffrey, Brandon Marshall. That's not the case. And DJ Moore is a true blue collar receiver. He's not like a typical prima donna receiver to where he's not trying to get his jersey dirty. He's going to go in there and go in there and make blocks and lead on a linebacker if it's called for. He's going to make that tough contested physical catch over the middle of a defense, and then he can make those deep, big, explosive plays that we saw him make here in Chicago, in critical moments. So, like I said before, Buffalo's getting a complete receiver. You're getting a tough receiver, a guy who's a true football player. I mean, Ben Johnson even utilized him in the backfield last year as well. So you're getting a nice weapon to go along with that great quarterback that you guys have there by the name of Josh Allen.
Yeah, it's interesting because Caleb Williams, he'll pull off a Josh Allen type play pretty regularly, right? I mean, they do stuff that you don't think nobody else will do, right? And Caleb Williams has that in his game. In fact, that you're right. They're down at the 2-minute warning in 7 games this year and come out and win those games. That's big. How does Johnson, your head coach, incorporate that into philosophy, right? How do you get that last 2 minutes where you're down? How do you do that in the first quarter, second quarter? You know what I mean? How's that offense going to evolve with a quarterback and the unique skill set that Caleb Williams has, kind of like Josh Allen here in Buffalo?
Yeah, I think now, with Caleb, being, look at Caleb, right? First 2 years, 2 offenses, a bunch of head coaches, instability. Well, now you have a guy that's going to be here, for a while in Chicago, a guy who has a good track record in terms of putting together a productive offense. And it started throughout his days in Detroit, and he brings that here in Chicago. So you have a guy, you have some stability, and now Caleb can build upon what he did last year. And Ben Johnson, I think, the Bears are just scratching the surface of how dynamic this offense can be because, in year 2, guys are going to be more comfortable. And now Ben can add more layers on this offense. And they got a ton of young playmakers, on the perimeter for Caleb to distribute that football to. So you lose DJ, you lose a veteran presence in that wide receiver locker room. But you got guys like Luther Burden, the emergence of Colston Loveland, Jade Walker, obviously Roma Dunze. You have a ton of weapons at the disposal for Caleb Williams. And then Caleb is a weapon himself, like you mentioned, Steve, with the amount of ways that he can get out of the pockets, right? Put a lot of stress. A lot of quarterbacks can't make in this league, and he put that on display time and time again. So, I think the arrow is still pointing up, even despite the departure of DJ Moore. But he's definitely a guy that's going to be missed in the Chicago community, among the fan base and in that locker room.
Look, like a lot of people out there, I'm a fantasy football guy. What's the loss of DJ Moore mean, the impact, how's that spread out now to the rest of the wide receivers?
Yeah, I mean, it's just target volumes go up. I think, it's going to be spread out with Ben Johnson because, he said it in a press conference this year. He doesn't go into a game plan saying that, hey, I have to get this particular player 8 targets, right? He's going to spread that football around. That ball is going to go to where that, the coverage dictates. And, it could be, Colston Loveland can have the hot hand. Luther Burden can have the hot hand one week. Romo Dunze can have the hot hand one week. If Cole Kmet is back in the fold, he could have the hot hand one week. So I think when you're making defenses defend every blade of grass, right, and the complexity of an offense that Ben Johnson instills, it makes it difficult. But, hey, productivity follows that. So it's been exciting to see. And it's going to be also exciting to see how that continues to grow throughout, this season and throughout training camp and what they can put on display next year.
Sounds like everybody eats.
That's right. Yeah, there you
Sounds
go.
like something we've heard a lot.
That's right. So give us an idea. So now the Bears have freed up, like you said, a ton of cap space. They got some young wideouts that they're probably going to lean into for their young quarterback. What's it look like for the Bears? What are the holes they got to fill? I know Tremaine Edmonds has been asked. He can go seek a trade. That if they release him post June 1, that'll free up a lot more space. What are they going to do in free agency in the draft?
Yeah, a lot of holes now, right? And you just added a big hole right in the middle of your offense with Drew Dahlman retiring, right? The center and quarterback have synergy, right? They're responsible for a lot of things. Center obviously making a lot of the calls that designates and sets the pass protection, right? But also in the run game, him being able to get everybody on the same page. And so that's a big hole and a big void left by the retirement of Drew Dahlman. But you had another hole with Ozzie Trapilo, that the rookie left tackle, being hurt, who was just coming into his own and solidifying that left tackle position. You got to decide what you're going to do at safety. You got Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker. What are you going to do there? You mentioned Tremaine Edmonds at linebacker. TJ Edwards is a linebacker that got hurt at the end of the season. So you have holes there. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Bears do. Also, defensive line, the talk has been Max Crosby. What are you going to do to try to create pressure and get pressure on a quarterback? So there's a lot of holes, on this Bears team right now. It'll be interesting to see, what Ryan Poles does and what direction he goes in with this new amount of cap space he's created, with the trade of DJ and the retiring of Drew Dahlman.
Jason, give me a little bit more on Tremaine Edmonds, right? Because when his contract came up here in Buffalo, that was a big topic of conversation because they've spent a high first-round draft pick on him. He played well. He was never really turned that corner where he was an elite, dominant player. So they let him go. What were the last few years for Tremaine like in Chicago?
Yeah, I would say it was up and down. I would say his first year, he made a ton of plays, but then he didn't make a lot of plays, missed some tackles. I know that was an area of concern. Last year as well, missed some games due to injury, but also made a lot of plays. So I think it's up and down. And I think with the Bears, they're looking at, that cap number as well and the productivity that they can get, or possibly bringing somebody else that's cheaper, or you have a coaching staff that did a really good job of developing players. And, this year, I think the Bears' success was really predicated on next man up. So there was a lot of times that, in particular, these linebackers were out of the lineup. Tremaine Edmonds himself was out of the lineup, and you're bringing a guy like DeMarco Jackson comes in and has a double-digit tackle game. And that goes for a lot of the positions on this Bears team. Guys stepped up because the coaching staff did a good job of making sure that they were developed and prepared to seize that opportunity when it presented itself. So I think that's what the Bears are looking at. They're looking at, hey, his availability, his productivity, weighed against how much we're paying him and how much cap space we can free up. So I think, he might be the next guy that could be on the trade block.
Jason McKie, sideline reporter for the Bears on their game day broadcast. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you.
No, thank you guys. You have a good day. I appreciate it.